Try this again. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hey there.
Okay, guys, are we ready to go? Does everyone have their books?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. You've entered Night Vision, and I am Opus Night. And tonight we have 4 authors that we are so excited to join us. So we're going to get started. And thank you for joining us. Okay, Dave, get us started, love.
Hi.
Tell us about you.
I'm a recently self-published author. I've been working on a fantasy series since 2019. Well, actually, I've been working on it since 2005, but I released it in 2019. I've got 3 books out now, another one in the works. And then a sci-fi novel as well. I'm a recently sort of semi-retired geology professor. My department got shut down, so I quit doing that, but I taught geology for 24 years at Guilford College here in Greensboro. So that's part of me. I do improv comedy at a local comedy club, the Idiot Box. So if you're in town, you might want to come see that. I play the tuba. I like Taco Bell. I don't know. There's, I'm not sure what you're looking for, but yeah.
I feel like I'm on a dating site right now.
I know. Long walks on the beach. That's, yeah, I like that.
Everyone noticed his face is getting his cheeks are getting red.
Yeah, no, that's very typical.
And you have 5 books right now?
I have 5 out almost. The 4th one in the Inquisitor Guild series is going to come out probably end of February.
Okay.
So I've got 4 out with one driving it to the hospital and running through the red lights trying to get it born. But yeah, it's on the way. And I have another thriller that I'm working on. So yeah, but 4 out, almost 5.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Ethan?
Oh, hi. So we're just doing a full description of books himself and all that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I didn't set up a whole screenshot of books. I have one book on me, which is trying to have it not disappear in space.
Pull it forward. There we go.
Is it looking any better on your screen than mine? Because mine is
Floating
kind of like
backwards.
fading into the stars.
Pull it back just a bit.
Put it in front of your shirt, then it'll show up better.
Pull it back. Right
There you
there. Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, this is also a book which has its origins in 2005, and I published in 2018.
I love it.
Thank you. I love this cover.
That's a nice cover.
Thanks. Wish I drew it myself. I paid for it, but I feel it's a good investment.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's I guess comic fantasy. It's a story of this half dragon on this planet, this faraway planet, who's just trying to be a college student. And people are bothering him because there's this giant conspiracy which, as tends to happen in books, he happens to be the only one who can stop it.
Okay.
There's this giant conspiracy to take music away from everybody, and he's the only one. Since it's a fantasy story, he's the only person in the entire country who is cynical enough not to sell his digital music.
Oh, I see.
He's the only one who can take, because they get technology shipped from Earth. They get technology shipped from Earth. They have digital files. He's the only one who can take his CDs and MP3 files all the way up to this faraway mountain and get them replicated so that music is no longer gone.
Okay. Did you want to read the blurb?
Sure, I am always not a fan of blurbs, but I'll read the blurb. T.J. Brown hoped for a relaxing sophomore year at Yukon University. That's him. He's part dragon, is my ability. Full of listening to music and school-sanctioned fire breathing. Unfortunately, the evil god Jebisk stole everyone's music except for TJ's. This means that unless TJ can get his music files to a monastery on the top of a mountain, Jebisk will become the oppressive dictator he's always wanted to be. On the bright side, the mountain isn't far away. On the not so bright side, he only has a few days to get there. And getting there is a perilous endeavor, even for a half dragon.
Very nice. I like it.
Thank you.
Now, Dave, we didn't forget about you. Did you want to read the back blurb?
I would love to. I was not aware that was the thing, so it's totally my bad. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Everyone, it's my fault. I was rushed
that's
today.
okay.
I didn't explain for everyone to read their blurb. Just so readers, because they know at this point, they're like, oh my God, the blurb, read the blurb.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have known.
That's okay.
I watched some of your other ones here. I just got caught off guard there. So this is the blurb for the first book in my my detective sort of mystery series that's set in a fantasy city. And the blurb goes like this. Sometimes your case takes a left turn, or 3 or 4. Martin Mingenstern and Boog Eggstrom are provisional inspectors fresh out of the Inquisitors Guild training and eager to prove themselves. Assigned the mundane task of tracking down stolen jewels, they instead uncover a mysterious cult set on destroying the city. After a thief explodes, they earn the enmity of a vicious noble, the chief inquisitor gets bought off and goes rogue, they are seized by barbarians, and they are sentenced to death at least a couple of times. In a final frantic race against prophecy, they face ruthless fanatics, a city turned against them, and terrible forces long buried. So that's the setup anyway.
Very nice. I like it. Abby, how are you, love?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to see new faces here.
Thank you for joining us.
So my name is Abby, credited as Abigail on all my books because it's longer and looks more impressive. I've been a writer for a while, and the novels that I am pimping out throughout our meetings here are my series called Season of the Runer. And as you can see, it's got like some magic in it, some dragons, some dudes in cloaks and all that good stuff. The sequel just came out, which is this one, which I'm very proud of the cover. I also have an artist that I am like in love with his work. So he does beautiful stuff. The premise of this series is I always tell people it's a little bit like The Witcher, because that's something famous that everyone knows about now. There's monster hunters, there's necromancers, I've got some witches and stuff like that. It is a dark fantasy, so it deals with a lot of violence. There's a lot of dark tones. My brother told me it actually takes him a long time to get through one of my books because it's so depressing. But I will not read the blurb of the second one because that doesn't make sense. So my first book is called The Trial of Two. It says, the endless road and life of a monster hunting runer has gone stale for Tsarek, and death is the only alternative. Tired of risking his life for the prejudiced people of Almira, it's time to just let go. The only thing that stands in his way, a runer cannot take his own life, breaking the oath to the dark magic that binds him to the hunt. When a warlord from the Far East threatens her family, Sybil, a young diamond mine heiress with a lavish lifestyle, takes action to protect her family and estate. But when her crime is witnessed, she must stand trial for murder. To save her own life, Sybil calls for a trial by runing, a dangerous and often fatal pact with unknown magic. Thrown together by law and dark magic oaths, Tsarek and Sybil find themselves entangled with an eldritch force when a lone necromancer hell-bent on devastation rises up and ravages the eastern continents. Tsarek must conquer his desire for his own demise and train the empathic Sybil to save the people from arisen death.
I love it. Absolutely gorgeous cover.
Oh, thank you. His name's Andre Batt. He's on 99 Designs. He's very good.
Very, very nice. I like it. Joe, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And should I call you Opus, or should I call you Madam Knight, or how do I address you?
however you like. On this
Okay.
show, as Abby will tell you, I nonstop mix up on names. And if I mix up on a name, within 2 seconds, I end up giving someone a name to begin with.
Well,
I'm one of
mine's
those-
easy. It's Joe. It's hard to screw up, and it's easy to forget though. So
I could always call you JoJo. You never know.
hey, that'll work. That'll work.
It-
I'm easygoing.
I have run the gambit when it comes to coming up with names for people throughout the years, and it's just something I do, you know. Now, Joe, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come in front of you and all your viewers. And I too am a debut author. My new book is called The Last Keeper, and The Last Keeper is an epic fantasy tale. So if you like sword and sorcery, or you enjoy Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, that's the genre in which I write. It's the first of a series of 4 novels that'll be coming out once every 4 months for the next year and change. So this launched officially on the 1st of January. And the book, I think, tackles a lot of fun themes. There are themes of forbidden love. There's themes of overcoming struggles, and some of those struggles are things that I think fantasy readers will like. I won't give away too much or any kind of spoilers in there, but I think the book itself follows along the lines of much of like the Terry Brooks kind of sort of Shannara kind of stuff, but there's I think a nice little sort of horror and gothic play that comes into it too. I would not call it dark fantasy, but there are some dark moments in the book that I think that folks of the gothic and horror genres would also enjoy as well. So reading my blurb very quickly. A young boy's prophetic visions. Blind at birth, Damus Alaric is blessed with the gift of prophetic sight. Now, as a keeper of the forbidden, he must use his powers of the sight to foil the plans of a fallen keeper, Grey Taurus the Mad. An elven princess with a horrific secret. Princess Adeline Elspeth travels from Eldwall, a magically hidden home of the Vermilion Elves, to begin her life as a diplomat in the human capital of Castleshire. During her journey, she stumbles upon a mystical creature foretelling ill tidings. A terrifying force of evil. Damus's recurring nightmarish visions threaten to catapult him into a terrific and terrifying struggle that will leave the fate of the keepers and the realm hanging in the balance. Damus and Princess Adeline must set out to face the menace that threatens their very existence. Will the entire realm fall to its knees?
Beautiful.
And that is the first book in the series, The Last Keeper.
Very nice. Well, guys, just so you know, I run the show like a round table where everyone just jumps in, and if I ask one author a question or another, please feel free to jump in and pose any comments, questions, or anything thereof, okay? Okay. Abby, I'm going to get you started.
Alrighty.
What is the hardest part when you were writing your book? Now, I've asked you this before. I want to check if you can recall what your answer was, or if it's changed a little bit. Because this is a question that I have found, even with friend authors, this question changes so profoundly depending on where they're at during their writing journey. So
no, I do not remember what I said, but I don't remember what my supervisor said in our Zoom meeting this morning either. For me, for this one, for the whole series, really, it's been fighting for, I guess, I used to be plagued by like, oh, is it original? When writing, and I haven't had that with this series. And so I keep trying to re-implement it and like checking myself, like, well, it's coming so easily and so quickly, so it must not be original. You're regurgitating something you read somewhere, go back and check, like go look at your bookshelf. So I guess that might be a symptom of something we all deal with, which is imposter syndrome, maybe. So that's definitely haunted me a lot throughout this, that it can't be this easy to spit out. I spit out 30,000 words in 2 weeks for the third book, and that's bizarre. So I, kind of dealing with the, am I just spitting out something I read and I don't remember? So
Joe,
I think.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I have another question before that one. You posed a comment that you said, I don't want to give any spoilers away. On here, we love spoilers. But by all means, tell readers something that they can look for in that book, that they're going to race out and get that book because they know you're going to deliver some surprise to them. So what is it?
Yeah, so well, there's a couple of things that I could mention, but I think that I think if I was giving away something that wasn't a true spoiler, but it was enough to tantalize folks and get people to really want to run out and buy my book, like you say, I think that the thing that excites me about this is that I am a planner or a plotter. I'm not a pantser. So everything I do has a purpose. I can't write without knowing the end. I write from the end backwards. And so there are Easter eggs throughout the book that will pop up from time to time. Some of them are buried for friends and family that I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons with for many years, or, are familiar with, parts of the novel because I've talked to them and used them as my beta readers and all those kind of things. But I think that I would say that as you read it, there are clues in there, but everything has a purpose. Nothing is by accident. And so, when you're reading chapter 3, that will be important to the end of book 4. There are things along the way, little crumbs like Hansel and Gretel, that I leave for people to follow their way through the set of the novels, and there's no wasted space, and that's hard to say. I mean, the book is about 130,000 words. It's a 400 plus page first novel, and the others are going to be like that too. But I think that if people like that kind of stuff and realize it's almost like a clue game or a detective novel, and there are things that I'm mentioning, there are reasons I'm doing it. There are no wasted words. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I am a lover. I hate to say it. This is an admission that I know I've had people ask me 1,000 times. Did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm like, perhaps, but I love it. Absolutely love it.
You have to wear that on your sleeve. Like, it's finally popular. For once in our lives, being a geek is a popular thing. Like, it's sexy to be that Silicon Valley nerd that's out there with the new tech, and it's okay to be, Ready Player One at home, and all that. It's finally in, and so while it's in, let's take advantage of it. Let's talk about it and herald it from the hills, right?
Well, the funny thing is, over the years, even growing up, I was always that child that had the black hats or the wings long before they called it cat eyes. I got thrown out of Catholic class, in Catholic school many times for writing dark poetry or dark literature or reading any kind of dark literature, whatsoever. So, yeah, I was that kid. So, just so you know, we finally are allowed to do these things. We're grown-ups. Yeah! And I love it.
I may have a year or two on some of you here at least, but I've been playing D&D since back in the Keep on the Borderlands days, the basic set way back.
See, there's a man after my own heart. Yeah. There you go. You go back
to that's before me. That was before me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there was a time from about like 1978 to 82 maybe when it was really popular and all the, the jocks and the cool kids were playing as well. And it was in ET, back in the day. And then it turned into this nerdy thing. And so by the end of high school, I was a total nerd again. But now it's so great. My kids play and it's exciting, and there are comics and webcasts and all this kind of stuff going on. So that's been a huge revolution to see it come back again and come back to stay, really, which is
great. I find the irony in what you said there, David, because I won't tell you how old I was in '78 because we don't want to go down that path for your sake. But Keep on the Borderlands was the first module I played too, and the ET reference you just made, generationally, I just watching Stranger Things, it's the same thing. It's really kind of come full circle, and thankfully Wizards of the Coast rescued those guys a number of years ago and kind of really regenerated it, and now it's sexy. I literally you see Vin Diesel and Joe Manganiello and people like that playing on TV, or excuse me, not TV, it's on YouTube channels and Twitch and Discord. I mean, I could have never imagined that happening 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and now it's like it's the in thing to do.
Well, we're
the popular kids finally, right?
Right. And this is TV to me. This is my show, and that's what I tell people. I have a show. This is my show. This is probably the only time I will be on TV. So anyway.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm nice, I promise. I rarely get to actually give a shout out to people, and I have to give a shout out to Ron Lahr, who is on here a lot, and absolutely adore him. But he knows as well as I do that the one thing with growing older is everything comes back, full circle. And the things you couldn't do when you were a kid, or you shouldn't do when you're a kid, as an adult, you find those are the things that you kind of gravitate to naturally that you've been doing for years. And like you said, now it's cool. And on that note, I have a question. Trust me, whatever I say, I always have a clue in, and Abby will tell you. I always have a question that readers will email me and ask. Now, Dave, you have a couple of books under your belt right now. In writing your plot, how is it that you start the beginning of a book? Tell us exactly how does that first line work you is what I want to know, because there's a lot of authors that will work longer on the first line or sometimes throughout the entire book and go over that first line 1,000 times changing it. So tell us your spectacular little remedy for that first line.
Well, I can tell you what I do. I don't know how spectacular it is. It certainly wouldn't rise to the level of being thrown out of Catholic school, which is I'm very honored to know you for that. I think I'm the opposite of Joe here. I am a total pantser, so up to a point. And so the first line is just the first scene that I write, and I usually have no idea where the book's going. I will just write a scene with the characters that I've chosen to follow, and I'm figuring them out as I write. I think that comes from D&D and also from improv, where
I think it definitely comes from improv. That would definitely help with that sort of structure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just let them have a scene, and then each chapter is kind of okay, what next, and I build the plot that way. So I don't really worry about the first line part until I come back and edit it, and then I know sometimes I think people put way too much emphasis on like having a killer first sentence, but I will go back and think, is this really the best way to kick off once I know where it's gone and what it's going to look like. That's the problem with writing without an outline or all of these Easter eggs that Joe was talking about, is that if you don't know where you're going, you have to enjoy the journey, but it's harder to have it all make sense. And so the editing process is for me, is a process of going back and taking all these things that I had thrown in and then smoothing them all into something that actually fits where it ended up. So really the starting is not hard. I just write a scene and see what happens, and that first line will come probably later in the editing once I know the people better and see how it's going to work.
Nice. Abby, how about you, dear?
So actually I was going to kind of build off of what he was saying. And this is something, so I mentor and I do developmental edits also. And man, I can tell when I get a pantser. I am a plotter. However, a lot of things I tell the people I mentor and the people I edit for, and really any other pantser, when they're like, I don't want to be a plotter. I don't want to outline because it's so restrictive. I do the same thing you do, Dave. I usually like to start in the action for myself as a writer. So I'll write the first scene and something is happening with someone. But then oftentimes I'll take that chapter 1 and then it becomes chapter 6. And then there's a new chapter 1. Sometimes, very rarely, usually with short stories, I'll have that first line where it's like, oh, this is, such a good opener for a short story. And it's sure to, pull all of its weight. But that doesn't happen often. So like even with plotting, I'll go around and move chapters around, and what was the first line is no longer the first line. And it really kind of depends on what kind of drama I'm going for in the beginning. Am I easing people in? Does it, rudely and forcefully, or, like what aesthetic am I going for at the beginning? So the first line does change a lot. And fortunately, I've been a very blessed writer in that when I sit down to write, I always write. I'm extremely prolific. So I've never really, I have, but I haven't been like stuck, like, what's the first line, the be all end all, because that's going to change, especially by the time your 6th draft is coming around.
Definitely. Ethan.
I've always been very much of a pantser too. I have never written an outline. I did not write outlines in school for essays or any of that. If I could ever
we would have hung out. We would have hung out.
Yeah, if I could ever get away with not writing an outline, I would have not written an outline. So my first lines, I guess they change and change and change, because as a pantser, it seems there's edit upon edit upon edit upon edit upon edit until it starts to make sense.
Okay. Good answer. Joe?
So yeah, I think I'm the opposite of everybody else. I have in my den where I write, I have this giant whiteboard, and it literally looks like a scene from The Beautiful Mind. And it has plot lines and arcs for characters that all come together. And in the middle is the final product of the book. And then that overlaps on other things like a Star Trek 3D chess game. And so I know where everything is going at all times. Who knows who doesn't know who, and that might be extreme, but it really helps me. And like I said before, it's like reverse engineering. Like I know the ending I want for every book. I know the ending I want for every character set. And I know where I want all these things to go. So it helps me work backwards, which, getting back to what Abby said, from writing as deep as I do at least my first experience through The Last Keeper was, without that guide, I would have gotten lost many times. And I think, your development editing and your copy editor and your beta readers, they all help you kind of keep on pace and, understand where you're going off, and, even simple things that you might miss. And with all that planning, I still felt unprepared, and these guys sitting down just writing. Oh my God, I would never, ever, I just wouldn't write. I would not write. Just wouldn't be me. Like I literally have to plan everything. And maybe that's, some weird OCD thing in the back of my head. But, so for me, I start out every chapter with a quote, and that quote sort of foreshadows what's going on in the chapter. And I know that's more common in sort of like middle grade or young adult kind of fiction, but I also think it's, I've seen some of my favorite authors do that, and I think it gets you excited, and, for me, when I see that, it's like, oh, I know what's coming in this chapter. I have to continue reading. And that's what I like about it. So, even though it might be that first line, I try to give everybody a little bit of a nugget, a little taste of what's going to happen in that chapter they're about to read, so they can't close the book or shut off their Kindle these days. You know how it is.
Very nice.
Yeah,
I-
or
I'm,
their nook.
I'm acting like a total badass pantser person, but when I wrote this second one here, it actually follows a couple different timelines, and about 30% of the way through, I was like, oh no. And I made a giant PowerPoint slide with all of the different timelines and who was around at different. So yeah, I totally went beautiful mind on that one. And it, you know, that one needed to, because it has even more complexity than, you know, the normal stuff that I do. But, and then it had, you know, the first book was kind of one mystery that gradually became revealed, but this one was about 3 or 4 that they were finding pieces of at different times, and people that were around sometimes and not other times. So it was, yeah, I act like I'm totally, you know, fancy free here, but I need to, it's weird, about halfway through is when the pantsing runs out. And then I'm like, okay, this has to start to make sense. I kind of see where it's going, and I need to bend everything to that, because if I keep adding new random stuff, then it's way more balls thrown up in the air than I can catch. And so I have to start catching them, and not, you know, adding more chaos. So yeah, I will sometimes start to outline about halfway through, and that helps.
Now, when is it a good time to throw a new character in? How do you know where that character belongs? When you're in the developmental stage of a character, and you're like, okay, now I know we don't outline, but we always have some sense of who's in our story. So I'm not going to let anybody get away with it, because I know that you already know those characters inside and out before you ever start writing. Now, their journey might go any which way or awry at times, you know, and have twists and bends, but how do you get those characters to a point of where you're like, all right, Nicholas, you're starting us out, and then we're going to have Brittany over here, and then we're going to have this one here? And how do you place those characters in play to know exactly where this story is going to go, so that you can get the story that you want? Now I'm going to ask you, you're going to start us out, Joe.
Yeah, so for me, it's you know, again, going back to my plotter roots, I already kind of know where the characters need to go, you know, from the flow of the story, and where they're going to have the most impact. And so I typically will introduce a new character in a place, you know, especially if they're getting introduced to one of the main characters, whether it's a protagonist or villain in the novel. You know, I already know where I'm going to drop them in, because there's a reason for them to be there at that point, and you get to know them a little better. And I think pacing is a really important piece of any kind of series. And for me, you know, knowing that you're not going to know everything about the villain, you're not going to know all the motivations of every character in the beginning, but then there are reasons that they show up at certain places. So for me, it's all part of that outline in the beginning, and frankly, it's how I write towards their introduction. So I kind of know where I need them to show up, and, you know, and then my development editor changes it around every now and then. But, you know, I try to, you know, I think be part of it's part of the overall story arc. And I think that, you know, I've also tried to look at it in terms of, you know, what, you know, if I were watching a TV show, where's a good ending and where's a good beginning? You know, where does this chapter start and where a chapter ends? And I believe when the chapter ends and you're trying to pull readers to read into the next chapter, that next chapter has to start out with something new. And sometimes that's a new character.
Now, how do you know when a chapter is going to end? Where do you know when to stop that chapter?
Oh, come on! I feel it in my bones.
Abby, did I not warn them?
Yeah, like I'm telling you right now. Like, for me, it's like when you're writing towards something, and there's either a natural break because a scene is ending. You know, so for example, in my book, there's many, you know, medievalish battle scenes, right, with magic and swords and, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, when a battle scene ends, there's typically something there that marks that this is the end of the battle, and it's safe to turn the page and you're going to go somewhere else in the book. Or if there's something that tips you off. The group solves a mystery or finds a clue to something else, or there's a real dramatic pause. Like a mini cliffhanger that it's a good. You just, as an author, I think you know that. And if you've read as much as I have in my lifetime, or you're a fan of movies or anything else, there's that natural, instinctive point of drama that says this is where we need to stop, and this is where we need to start something else.
Can I add on to that real quick?
I like it. He did a good job. Go ahead.
So I don't know if anyone is, well, no, that was going to be rude. So my favorite Batman is the Adam West and Burt Ward Batman, the TV show. And they were notorious for their cliffhangers, right? Like every episode was a two-parter. I've watched that whole series so many times. And it's just like, I had one client that I was like, where would the Adam West Batman end in this chapter? Like, and he was like, oh, well, I think I went past it like by like 3 paragraphs or like 3 pages. And I was like, okay, then that's where it needs to get cut off. Cause it's like, if you just hear it, same bat time, same bat channel, like right here, that's where you need to cut off. And he was like, but I wanted to finish writing it. So I was like, okay, we'll finish writing it, but then take it off and put it in the next chapter. Like stop that chapter there. You can feel it in your back cloak.
I love that.
Yeah, you're asking when, how I fit my characters in, and the honest answer is whenever they show up. Because I don't really know who they are before they emerge. When I was writing Outcast Crown, which is the second one, they were able to kind of see through this magical pool they have in the Inquisitors Guild. They saw somebody being murdered in an alley. And he used the secret hand speech that only the Inquisitors know. So they knew that he was one of them, but nobody recognized him. And of course, as soon as he signals and uses the speech, that's the time to end the thing. Cause then you're like, oh my God, who's this guy? How does he know that? So yeah, the same bad time thing was going on there. That's an awesome way of putting it. But I didn't know who that was. I was like, this is an awesome thing for him to be. Oh, if he knows the hand speech, that's even cooler. And then I spend all night and the next morning trying to figure out who the hell he is and how he possibly knows that, Mm-hmm. And so and then, there's another scene where they find his apartment and they're inspecting it, and, they find some stuff in there that they're not sure what is. And then this woman hops through the window and steals something that they'd been puzzling over. And she like throws blinding dust at them and stabs one guy in the foot and then jumps out of the window and runs away. She just showed up. I didn't know who she was. It turns out she was a pretty major character and had a whole reason, but I hadn't made it up yet. So that's the extent to which I'm like totally running on fumes, I guess, the whole time. Is I don't know who these people are or what they're going to be. They get they get sort of beaten into shape during the editing process and smoothed out, because once I know who they are and why they were there and what they were doing, then I can go back and I make it make more sense. But yeah, my characters, most of them, except for the couple of main ones, they just show up and then they're part of it. And if they suck, I take them out. But
now how about the dialogue?
For me, the dialogue, it comes from improv, because I'm always thinking, who's this person? What do they care about? What would they naturally say next to that? Even if it isn't something that drives the plot, or, it's just what would a reasonable person who's like this say? So for me, the dialogue comes that way. And I think, I hope that it comes out more natural than some of the dialogue, where everyone's talking about the quest they need to go on or something like that. Somebody's going to be scratching themselves and wondering what's for dinner. And, so I try to not have everything be so lofty, and, people make jokes, or they do something that annoys the other one, or, and so I try to make the scenes build that way. And that really helps the improv training, I think. And also D&D, which is basically a whole improv game, works the same.
Okay. I like it. Ethan, how much work do you put into researching before you start your journey into this book?
Pretty much no research. I don't really research. And I guess some of the inspiration might come from like other depending on the book, but other books, someone in the genre might like inspire somewhat. But I've never been. It's just kind of ironic since I was a history major in college, so you would think I would be into research.
Hmm.
But I think part of the reason why I kind of stopped and did not pursue that anymore is because I kind of realized that enough is enough when it comes to research. I did not want to like get super involved in research.
Okay.
Mine in this book, it probably isn't like that heavy when it comes to like the sort of stuff you'd research. And
So it's more lighthearted?
it's pretty lighthearted, yeah.
Okay. Abby?
Characters?
Research.
Oh, research. Oh, research.
Oh, research.
So let's see. So the most interesting research I did was for my short zombie survival novelette, which actually I don't have a copy of, and I realized that tonight as I was getting ready. Like obviously I did research for Runer because it takes place in a Middle Eastern fantasy world. And so I wanted to make sure that I was incorporating, you know, little known lore, interesting hauntings, monsters, things from myth and legend, that kind of stuff. It's like my absolute favorite research. I give myself a month to research before each book for that one. But for the zombie one, it's called Why They Killed. I researched radiation, how long radiation stays around after a nuke, because I'm an English major, you know, I don't know like any of this stuff. I did make minor in geology for a semester though, but then the science got hard. But so I did research on that, and I found out that moss becomes like irradiated or something. It like holds on to radiation more than anything else surrounding it. And so I was like, that's super cool. Obviously a plot point now. So I used that. I've read about Geiger counters and was able to use those and like the sound that they make as a plot point, which I didn't know about those. So that was super fun, and being able to take all of that research and actually make it a plot point, because I love Michael Crichton and I thought for the longest time, you know, all of his science was real. And I was like, I want to take this real stuff and give it that element. And so that's what the research does for me, is kind of ground it and have people be like, yes, but no, when they read my especially my science fiction.
Gotcha. Joe?
So as you can imagine, and I'm guessing by now everybody expects, I do a hell of a lot of research for my stuff. And in part it's because, you know, I want to make sure that it's believable. And I think Michael Crichton is a great segue for that. I mean, there's a plausibility to everything that he writes. And it's something that as you write, you're like, oh yeah, that could happen. Mm-hmm. Right. And in my case too, in writing, you know, fantasy adventure stuff, even though it's magical and whimsical and fantastical and all those kind of things, it still has to be based on something that the reader would say, yes, that makes sense. That can happen. In my head, that can happen. So I've researched crazy things like Abby did. Like I researched how a privy worked at a castle because a body was stuck down in there. And for those of you who don't know what a privy is, it's a bathroom in a castle, and how it's maintained and empty. You know what I mean? I researched, there's a falcon, one of my main characters, Ritter. Ritter has a falcon hand, and his you know, his familiar, his pet falcon flies to him on his hand, and I didn't know what falcons ate. You know what I mean? I guessed what they ate, but I wanted to make sure that they ate it right. So I researched little details like that, because I think that adds not just to world building, but it also adds to that little nugget, or the little piece of something that needs to be believable enough that I can get them over the fact that they're reading something that's totally made up. And it brings it back to a point of reality where it's like, oh yeah, well, of course that's how a castle empties its poop into the river, right? You know, and so like I had to do those kind of things just to make sure that I was doing this. So I would put me, if on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm an 8 guy on the research.
Now, what advice would you give? Now you said fantasy. Well, it's more fantasy, sci-fi-ish, but you have elements of romance in there, you said.
Well, sure. I mean, I think that's everywhere, right? And I think that regardless who's reading my novel, I want it to be something that's believable. And sometimes, when characters are forced together under stressful situations, emotions happen, right? And so I think it's important that that there is romance, and romance of all types. I think that that's also important for the readers of my genre. And I think the same thing holds true for any novel, whether it's something that's modern day. I think in my case, though, when you're trying to build an entire world around something, there, sometimes, the different romances. For example, one of the main characters is his race is Trollborn, which is a term that the folks in Warminster use to describe people of mixed races. So his father is a human, and his mother is a raven elf. And they come together to create this Trollborn. And so he's looked down upon, not just because he's royal and sort of this, border knight getting back to the keep on the borderlands. He protects the borders from these cryptid creatures that often attack the bridge, which is his home. And he's looked down upon by the humans because he's not fully human, and he's not fully a raven elf. And so he fits into this category of craziness. And so there's a scene in there where his mother's describing how she fell in love with his father, and how he was basically conceived at this battle of the bridge that happened 20 years ago. And of course, Ritter goes on to find his own love in the book. And, and I think that's important because, if I were reading it, it's everybody could pick up a sword and a shield and go into battle. But in the end, there's got to be some connection, something that brings you together in sort of a Daenerys Targaryen, Jon Snow sort of way, and you're waiting 3 novels for them to finally meet to get to where you need to be. And I think Ritter and Adeline are those kind of characters in my series.
And what advice would you give readers who want to be writers? Because we have a lot of emails that I get from readers who want to turn their reading experience into their own stories. And we so promote that because, to me, a story is, no 2 stories are the same. No 2 writers are the same. So I think it is incredible when someone can pull their stories together and teach or show a new light into something that someone else sees, and that is just amazing to me. Or make someone feel something that they never even knew they felt that way. That's incredible. Now, Dave, how, with new writers, what would your advice be? And I want you to start first because I'm going to come back to Joe, because I want Joe to elaborate on yours, just so they can get to the broad picture of how different just the way your interpretation is going to be. Okay, Dave?
So you're asking if somebody wanted to go from being an avid reader to writing their own stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So that was me, kind of. And I wouldn't advocate how I did it, which is take 14 years and, write on and off throughout that, and then, quit for a while and then come back and do it. No, I think writing things, just even if you're writing just a first chapter and you never come back to it, if you're trying out stories, you're building skill and you're seeing how it works. And, if you set out to build a chair and you went to Home Depot or whatever and bought a bunch of things, your first chair is going to suck and it'll probably fall apart right when you sit on it. But you'll be better at the second chair. You won't make the same mistakes. And you don't need to write a whole novel to learn how to write a novel. You do it in chapters and scenes and characters and that kind of thing. And so just starting to do a little bit of writing every week or even every day will get you into how it feels and how it goes. And you don't need a plot. You can do it derivative. You can do it even with characters that somebody else made up. Fan fiction turns into unique stories all the time. But just the act of doing it will get you there and get you better, and we'll let you know if you like it enough to try, because it doing a whole book is hard, and it took me an awful long time to be able to get to that whole book stage. The first book took me 7 years to do the first draft, and then another 7 to get it to where I thought it was publishable. Last November, I wrote a whole novel in a month, so you get better at it and faster, and you learn what it takes to do. But it's kind of like running a marathon. You're not gonna run the marathon the first day. You got to go out, get off the couch, put down the Taco Bell, jog a little bit. And so doing a little bit, if you're curious about it, we'll let you know if it's for you. And it's low stakes and easy to get started that way, I think.
Great advice. Joe?
I think Dave has a number of points of wisdom in there. If I were watching this show, I think he hit on a couple of things. Read and know your genre. I think that's important. And if you're a reader that wants to become a writer, you're probably already doing that, except, paying attention to how other people write too, I think is important. When I wrote my first draft, it was vastly different than my last draft before my publisher submitted it. I think that's important for folks. And also what Dave said about writing all the time. I think Abby even mentioned that a little earlier. It's got to be habitual. It's got to be something that you do. And I think it's something that is important, even if it's just doing an outline, even if it's just conceptually putting notes on a piece of paper. I carry, I use voice memos on my phone. I have a paper in my car that I could take notes on, even if I drive by a sign that has a cool name of a place, or I run into someone and they have a really cool name. I'm like, I'll ask them if I could borrow their name, for a novel and things like that. But I think that 2 points I would add to what David said is I would find somebody that's a good brainstorming partner. If you ever run into writer's block and you don't know what to write, I find that the way I break through that is I call someone that I trust that understands what I'm trying to write. And usually that's someone I've played D&D with, or someone that is a good friend that reads the fantasy adventure genre in the same way I do, or even watches those kind of films. And I ask them what they think I should do. And that little brainstorming session, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, I think that gets your creative juices flowing. And as a good writer, you need to have that interface. And then that brings me to my final point, which is don't be afraid of criticism. Go out there and share your stuff. Your beta readers are going to tell you whether your stuff is really good or it sucks. And don't get the beta readers that are going to tell you it's great no matter what you say, or I've worked with a number of folks that I don't even know, and I just send them things because they've asked for exchanges of beta reading. And I think honesty is important when it comes to that, and realizing that sometimes what you've written the first or even second time needs to be changed so it's better, and that people will like it. And those are the 4 sort of principles I would offer to any new writer.
I love it. Now, do you see you're both on the same page, but the information is twice as much for them to be able to absorb, because they're different perspectives. And I love that, because I get asked a lot about, how do I change over from being a reader? I read all the time, but the thing is, you're also writing. When you're thinking of creating scenes in your own mind, you're writing a book. You're actually writing a story, whether it's a short story, whether it's a poem, whether it's, so forth and so on. Now, Ethan, your advice, love?
I've been trying to formulate it, kind of anticipating that I would be asked.
I am the queen of putting people on the spot. Trust me.
I see this, which is good for development and being able to be put on the spot and be able to figure stuff out on the spot. So one big thing I think is the writing itself. If you're not confident with knowing how to put things in and out of quotes and various grammatical conventions and vocabulary and all that, I think it's going to be really easy to get stuck. So I think reading is really important, and just reading with an eye to make sure to kind of figure out, obviously I'm not prepared for it. I had not prepared this answer. But reading with an eye to, I don't know if anyone can finish my thought right now, because I think it's right there. I'm just not
like
finished.
Reading critically, like with intent, like trying to look for how someone else is crafting the story.
How someone else is crafting the story, how someone else, well, that's more for the plot thing. They do that too. But also just how to like write in general so that the dialogue looks like dialogue. It's not like a total mess, and you don't have like commas all over the place where they don't belong.
That's one way to know that you're starting to get there, is if you start reading like a writer as opposed to like a fan, and you do that anyway, even the first book you pick up. But when you're starting to think, oh, why did they put this character here? Oh, maybe that'll foreshadow something. You're starting to think about it the way filmmakers watch movies, or playwrights watch plays, or realtors go through houses. You're thinking about it in a more complex, professional way. And once you've done it a few times, you start thinking that way. You start noticing stuff that you wouldn't have noticed before about how the story is constructed.
And I think you are generally taught to do that to an extent in English classes if you do pay attention enough. So like, because all of it, like, foreshadowing was a big thing in literature, and there are other thoughts. But yeah, mostly foreshadowing and all sorts of literary techniques that once you learn what the literary techniques are, it's going to be a lot easier. It's at least going to be possible to apply them. It's going to take like time and effort to go from knowing what they are to going to the point where you can actually use them in your own writing. But if you don't know what they are, you're never going to be able to use them in your writing, or at least not well or intentionally.
The other thing you can try to do is start recognizing what different authors are good at, because not everybody is good at everything. I'm certainly not, but there's some authors that are great at fight scenes, and there's some authors that are great at sort of building tension or keeping pacing going. There are other authors who are awesome at complex characters or dialogue. And as you read somebody, and if it's resonating with you, try to figure out which part of that is really doing it for you, and that'll point you towards what you might be good at. Because if you're recognizing it and enjoying it, that might be something that you're actually, that's important to you and that you'll work on better.
Awesome advice. I love it. Now, I am going to ask each one of you, how can readers get in touch with you? Joe.
It's pretty simple. There's a couple of ways to do that. I mean, you could reach out to me on my website, which is jvhilliard, HILLIARD.com. I also have an Instagram account and a Twitter account, which are at JV Books for Twitter, and at JV Hilliard Books for Instagram. And then, of course, I'm available on Facebook at JV Hilliard. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. You can find me through those social channels, or you can find my book on Amazon, Apple Books. It's widely published. Dragon Moon Press is my publisher. And as you can tell by their name, they focus on my genre pretty exclusively in fantasy and some sci-fi. And then, of course, I have an audiobook too that was done by a gentleman named Victor Bavine. And Victor's done a lot of fantasy adventure novels, including the novels of R.A. Salvatore and some others that are very popular for the genre. So those are available on Audible and all the other 20 plus audiobook places where you can find the Last Keeper.
Okay. Ab, how can we reach you?
Sorry. So I'm so happy someone else does audiobooks. The best place to find me is through my website. On my website, I've got all my socials linked except for TikTok because it's still new and it's TikTok. But my website is www.abigaillinhart.com. So it's ABIGAILLINHARDT because it's German. So DT. .com. Everything's linked up there. You can buy my books from my website. which means I get more royalties, which is awesome. I'm also available everywhere, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, etc. I am also on Audible, Google Play Books, Apple Books, Hoopla. I'm on Hoopla, so you can get my books for free. So yeah, I'm pretty much available everywhere, and the website's the best place to go.
Awesome. Dave, how do we reach you?
My website is davedobsonbooks.com, which is very straightforward, but also is a much longer URL than I wish I had gone for. But yeah, davedobsonbooks.com. I'm on Twitter at GC Dave Dobson. I'm on Facebook. I have a books group. If you look for Frosthelm, you'll either find that or you'll find the South Dakota acid metal band, who are also awesome. And I didn't know that when I chose Frosthelm as my city. And then I'm also
it's pretty badass, by the way.
It really
pretty
is
badass. Yeah.
You know, there are things where you would discover that there was a product name the same as yours, and you'd be like, oh no, but finding out that it was a death metal band from the Midwest, that was right on. That was cool. My books are on Amazon, also in Kindle Unlimited. I've got one of them up on Audible now, which is free if you've got credits, or you can get it from there. And then my sci-fi book Daros is I'm just reviewing the draft now, so that's really exciting. That'll be out within probably just a couple weeks, and that's a space adventure taking place during a planetary invasion, a different kind of thing for me. So yeah, Facebook, Twitter. You can email me at dave@davedobsonbooks.com or drop by the website. There's a contact form, and you and a whole bunch of Russian spammers can write me there. And I'd love to hear from you. I've got a newsletter too that goes out every so often.
Okay. Ethan.
Hi, I'm on Facebook and Twitter under my own names. I am hoping to sometime soon set up some sort of reader group. I'm also hoping to actually set up the website in my own name I bought. But for now, it's really Facebook and Twitter. I also have an audiobook. It's the audio version of this one, Grumpy Hero. And I feel
Perfect.
The narrator, I thought it was really well done. I thought the narrator did a really good job. And of course, the first review I got was, "This is the worst thing I've ever heard. I listened to it all in one day and hated it."
Well, he finished it.
You hate this. It's the worst thing ever. You finish it all in one day. You listen to 6 hours in one day. I don't know what that is.
Those reviews are the worst.
Never,
Chapter
ever,
65
ever,
was
ever
very
read
annoying to me.
reviews. Have someone else read it for you and just kind of smile or walk away. Just please don't read reviews.
Yeah, I just heard that was, and the other, I think I only had 2 text reviews, and the other one, 3 text reviews. The other 2 are good. Just that one was the first one, and I think that just killed sales until I think it really killed sales until my narrator just cashed in some of the free credits. One, because somehow when you get out the free credits, that seems to lead to a bunch of sales.
Oh.
So it had no sales until he put in his free credits, and I realized, okay, maybe I should give out some codes too.
Oh, so from what I've been told by my publisher, all reviews, good or bad, are good for sales because it tweaks the algorithm. So it doesn't matter if it's a 1 or a 5. It literally it forces. I mean, if people are leaving it, they're passionate about it, and this guy might have hated it, but oh well. You know what I mean? It's okay. It's all good. We all have them.
Yeah, you're gonna have people that are gonna love everything you do, and then you're gonna have other people that not so much. It's not gonna happen.
And the ones who love them usually don't feel like writing reviews. They don't
The worst combo is the person who 3 stars every book you have. Why are you still reading?
Right?
Yeah, I've got somebody like that who every time I do a new one, it's like, I enjoyed parts of this, and I'm like, oh, okay, you're back.
Thank you for your money, though.
Yeah.
Guys, I've had a lovely night. and I thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
And readers, I am Opus Knight, and this is Night Vision, and you can contact any one of these authors, and if you have any trouble getting in touch with any of them, I am at opusknight.com, and I'm everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can probably see me in the streets, see me in the woods. I'm always around. Trust me, I'm easy to get in touch
I'll be at the McDonald's on 5th.
Exactly.
Yeah. My recommendation is not be saying that they'll see you on the streets. You might give some people the wrong impression.
I'll see you before you see me.
On Wood Street.
It's like a vampire, right? You know, I'll see you in a dark alley.
Joe's a plotter. He knows where he's going to be every day for the next
I know where it's going to be. It's not going to be on her in the dark alley with a vampire coming after her.
You'll know. You might find me in the dark alley. You don't know.
Fair enough.
Guys, thank you so much. I've had a lovely time.
Thank you, Opus. Same here.
Oh, you're very welcome. And join us anytime. Readers, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, have a lovely night.